Tell me, what is the biggest mystery of Avengers? Doomsday? Doctor Doom? Incursions? Battle World? No, it's Steve Rogers, brother. At the end of Endgame, he picked up the case and tried to put the Infinity Stones back somewhere, and because of that we are seeing this day now. Well, I am happy. If we talk about how Steve Rogers went back in time and created a new timeline, and what could happen, then the story is way more interesting than it looks. And maybe that is why we are seeing Doctor Doom today. Let's talk about it one by one. When we last saw Steve Rogers in the MCU, he was standing on that time platform, and after that he must have gone into the past to try and put the Infinity Stones back in their places. And when he returns in his old form, he himself confirms that he put the Infinity Stones back. Because he says, "When I put the Infinity Stones back," which means he left all the Infinity Stones back in their own times. Now how he achieved this feat, only he can tell. But personally, I feel that putting all the Infinity Stones back exactly the way they were taken is not possible. Especially the Reality Stone. Absolutely not. So maybe different timelines were created there. Or maybe Steve Rogers is telling the truth, and he kept all the Infinity Stones safe and sound, because of which no alternate timeline was created, except for one. When Steve Rogers himself decided that he would go into the past and settle down with Peggy. So that is one timeline that is a branch reality, and which was not supposed to exist. In fact, the writers of Infinity War and Endgame, Stephen McFeely, himself confirmed that a branch timeline was created there because of Steve Rogers. And guess what? He is writing the next Avengers, Doomsday. Now if we look at Steve Rogers going into the past with this mindset, and coincided with the current events of the MCU, Steve Rogers went back to 1940. And what was happening in the MCU in 1940? First of all, Hydra had definitely been destroyed, but they slowly started infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. with the help of Arnim Zola. This happened around 1942 and 43, and exactly at that time Steve Rogers would arrive there. And you know, for a very long time, I used to believe that Steve Rogers must not have created any branch reality by going into the past, because he is living quietly with Peggy, and he did not interfere anywhere, because he clearly knew the rules. He was told before being sent that you have to do nothing outside the normal path. But there is one very important thing about Steve Rogers' character that no one should ever forget, and that is that the guy understands logic and reasoning very well. But still he has a habit of breaking rules. In Captain America, the first Avenger, he disobeyed his senior and raided the Hydra base when he saved Bucky and his entire team. After that, we see the same thing in Age of Ultron, that he cannot stay back even after seeing wrong things. He has to do something about it. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is completely based on this thing. And the basis of Civil War is that Steve Rogers simply cannot tolerate wrong things. Now you imagine this Steve Rogers going back in time. So will he quietly watch Hydra's infiltration? Or knowing that Bucky is alive, will he not go to save him? Will he let him be brainwashed and become the Winter Soldier? I don't think so. This thing that we have been assuming, that Steve Rogers must have done nothing and just spent his life with Peggy, is just opposite to Steve Rogers' character. So Steve Rogers got to 1940. He understood that Hydra was infiltrating. He stopped that infiltration first, including Arnim Zola, because of which many future events changed. Maybe these people took Hydra's cutting-edge tech, which we also saw in Captain America, the first Avenger, and incorporated it into their own defenses. Which he actually does too. I mean, when he saves Bucky and brings him back, they also bring Hydra's weapons with him. So maybe it is possible that this time Steve Rogers went one step further, and through Hydra's tech, he tried to strengthen S.H.I.E.L.D. and the defenses of this entire Earth in this timeline. And because of this world became far more futuristic ahead of time. it became quite advanced. I mean, if Steve Rogers tried to stop the infiltration in 1940 and incorporated their tech into his defenses, then by 1960 we should see its effect. And we have already seen such a world, where the time is 1960, but everything is so futuristic. I am talking about Earth 828, where the Fantastic Four are living in a very advanced world. So it could be possible that Steve Rogers is in this same world, or this world was created because of Steve Rogers' interference. And Steve's work is not just stopping Hydra's infiltration. If he saves Bucky from becoming the Winter Soldier, then after that, all the butterfly effect things will automatically stop. The biggest of which is the death of Tony's mom and dad. If they don't die, then Tony's entire trajectory changes. He probably won't have daddy issues. Maybe he won't become Iron Man. Maybe we might not even see Avengers in this world, which also happens in Fantastic Four, because they are the only superheroes of this entire world. And not just that, due to Steve Rogers' interference, Avengers, Age of Ultron, everything changes. Whatever we see in the MCU will not happen in this world at all. Now the world was created. Steve Rogers also settled down. His desire was fulfilled. So then what is the point of coming in Doomsday? Why is it being said that Doom has a problem with Steve Rogers? Because all the incursions, the destruction of worlds, and the loss of his loved ones, these people are responsible for all of that. And Steve is one of them. So always remember this dialogue from Multiverse of Madness. Like Reed Richards himself said, if a variant goes to another world and leaves as big a footprint as possible, then the chances of incursions happening in that world increase. And this is what Steve has done. Now a very big point also comes in this. If Steve was doing so much stuff after going back, then what were the TVA people doing sitting around? So I have a theory about this. I feel that Steve Rogers going back in time, changing so many events, creating new timelines, actually happens when Loki takes his throne. I mean, we know that all of Loki's events are away from space and time, and you can place them anywhere in the MCU. But there are a few key moments where you can feel the changes in Loki's regime. For example, after Endgame, Loki arriving in that desert and pruning that whole branch was a key moment. But Steve Rogers going into the past and settling down his life was all Loki, because he allowed that thing. Maybe it is possible that he is also protecting Steve Rogers' timeline. Now what is the reason behind this? I don't know. Maybe he liked Steve Rogers' honesty very much. But this will be the reason that we are seeing a conversation between Loki and Steve in the trailers of Doomsday. In fact, Loki gave Steve his own card, which feels quite like a key. I mean, maybe Steve can use it to either access the TVA or reach Loki, which I think will be a very important plot device of this movie. But my point being, whatever Steve Rogers did after going back, creating a new world and all that, Loki himself allowed all this. Because Loki's whole ideology was based on giving free will. And whatever Steve Rogers did, it was absolute free will. But why is Loki doing this? Why is he going to Steve Rogers and giving him a key? Having a conversation with him. And I have this feeling that this will be a very important plot point for Doomsday. It's possible that since Loki sat on the throne and let the whole multiverse grow, incursions started happening because of it, which he actually had not thought of. And because of this, he considers himself responsible for all those incursions and all those deaths. And right here his guilty conscience also comes in, which will help save Steve Rogers' life. Maybe it is possible that due to all the changes Steve Rogers made by going back in time, the timeline that was created has now become incursion-prone. And Loki cannot save it even if he wants to. What he can save is Steve Rogers and his family. So he took Steve Rogers and put him in a world where there is no danger of any incursion, without realizing that Steve Rogers and his family are not meant to exist in that world. And maybe it is possible that because of Steve Rogers going there, Earth 828 has become incursion prone. And this is why Doom blames him. But why would Loki do this? So 1. His guilty conscience came in. 2nd, it is possible that he needs Steve Rogers. Because for Loki, time is very relative, and he can see every single thing at once. I mean, somewhat like Doctor Strange saw those 14 million outcomes. So whatever is happening, Loki knows about it, but maybe Loki also knows about what is going to happen. And he knows how big a part Steve Rogers will play in that whole thing. And by that whole thing I mean that entire war. So maybe Steve Rogers is Loki's best soldier, whom he saved first, so that he could use Steve Rogers in the upcoming war against Doom. And initially, I was a little skeptical about this, that why would Steve Rogers go to Earth 828? In fact, the house we saw in the trailer, its aesthetic feels completely different from Earth 828's aesthetic, which is absolutely futuristic. But then I watched Age of Ultron again. And you guess whose house Steve Rogers' whole house resembles? Clint Barton. In fact, if you observe Steve Rogers in that whole sequence, he just remains mesmerized after seeing that house. It feels as if he wants that same thing. Tony himself tells Steve that he wants to live on a farmhouse with Morgan. He wants to settle down. Steve says that life is not for me. But Steve feels otherwise. But look at Steve's house in the Doomsday trailer. It looks really similar to Clint's house. So it means that Steve definitely helped the world, but ultimately he wanted a farmhouse, like Clint Barton, where he could live happily with his wife and children. And that is what he did. In fact, it is being said that in a deleted scene of Fantastic Four, First Steps, we see Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, actually as a part of this same universe, which is also shown to an extent in the movie. This scene, it is said that this is Steve and his son watching a Fantastic Four cartoon. Plus, its post-credits scene, which was going to be based on Steve Rogers, not Doctor Doom, would have confirmed the same. And now comes this question, brother, why is he in Doomsday? When he has a good settled home of his own, then why leave it and come here? So I see two possibilities. First is that Loki has probably recruited Steve Rogers to handle this whole incursion matter, or whatever Doctor Doom is doing. Because Loki cannot do this work himself. He is sitting on his throne, from where it is not possible for him to move. And if you are thinking that then what is this doing in the Doomsday trailer? Then this is not Loki. This is probably an illusion created by him, which we have seen him doing throughout the MCU. And because of this, he cannot be directly involved in any matter of Doom. Unless and until he himself reaches in front of him, which I am sure will happen in Doomsday 2. So he must have recruited Steve for his own mission. Or the second possibility is that something has happened with Steve Rogers, because of which he is forced to come and support them. I could also say that Doctor Doom came and killed his child, which could be possible, but it will become a bit dark, and I am okay with it. And then from here, Steve Rogers will witness the events of his Doomsday. After witnessing them, he will go into Secret Wars, which we haven't even seen yet. And after that, when he becomes completely old, then he will reach Endgame to give that shield to Sam Wilson. So this means that this old Steve Rogers has already seen Doomsday and Secret Wars. And apart from that, he may have also seen something else that Marvel has not even planned yet. If Marvel wants to bring Steve Rogers for more projects in the future, they can easily do it. And in the end they will explain that yes, this old man had seen everything, at the end of which the shield was given to Sam Wilson. And regarding that shield, my theory is that it is a Bootstrap Paradox. That shield has no origin. Understand it like this. Sam Wilson took his shield in Doomsday. That same shield will carry forward in Secret Wars. Maybe Steve Rogers wields it, because he is not doing so in Doomsday, and then after Secret Wars ends, he gives that same shield to Sam in Endgame. So you see, the same shield keeps circulating. So I feel this will be a Bootstrap Paradox. I mean, no one knows where it came from. So now, how much of what I said is correct, I don't know. Even if it is correct, how much the Russos will show it in Doomsday, that I don't know either. But at the same time, we were also told in Fantastic Four, first steps, that whatever technology Earth 828 had, the futuristic tech we were shown, that was all created by Reed Richards. But this fact also cannot be denied that this entire tech has an uncanny resemblance with the TVA and its whole aesthetic. So maybe they might try to show some connection there. But actually, the chances of this are also very less. But yeah, a lot of things were going on in my mind regarding Steve Rogers. Why he is being made such a big part of Doomsday. Why is he being brought back? Especially when the plot does not have that much requirement. And then the Russos and McFeely's statements that Steve Rogers going into the past would have created an alternate timeline. And the Russos said that we got a specific perfect opening for Doomsday, which is directly connected to Endgame. Meaning it makes Doomsday a sequel to Endgame. So this is one of the theories that I could come up with. But yeah, you tell me what you think. We will talk about stuff. There are many more things about this. I want to know what you guys think. See you in the next one.